All right, as promised, I wanted to do the review of Group B. I don't think Group A is very interesting, and I don't think Group D is very interesting either. And well, it might be because the only regions that I really watch are EU and NA. But I also think that no one cares about Group D anyways, and then Group A, EDG, obviously gonna win, and we saw that. But there was a little surprise in there, so I will cover that game specifically. But other than that, we'll just kind of cover G2's road and Supermassive's road through Group B because I think it's very, very interesting. So, without further ado, I will pop up the draft images to let you guys at least imagine and see the team comps and the names and stuff, because some of these wildcard teams you just don't even really remember. So we have G2 versus Supermassive day 2. Now this is where famously Supermassive won, and if we look at the comps, it's kind of what G2 would ever want, right? You have the Olaf for Yankos, who that fits his style completely, and then you have Akali for Perks, so that also fits his style as well too. So you kind of get everything that you want. Like, yeah, sure, you don't get the Kaisa, but other than that, I really like G2's comp. I think it works really well in theory. But then you have Supermassive, and you have a early bot lane with Varus, and then you have the Tom Kench to help Varus. And what's also kind of cool is that Supermassive do a support mid laner, or a utility mid laner, and it's also to the extent that since it's Zillion, first of all, your bombs are most likely going to hit if Akali goes into her shroud, and you have a revive. So it's not really a kill lane anymore. It's just really, okay, she's gonna farm up, you're gonna farm up, and you're probably going to have the push too. Well, I guess the push is a little bit even, but it's still a really good lane for Supermassive and for GBM, and this fits GBM's style completely anyways. So really interesting. Then you of course have the Skarner tax, which is very important for keeping down Akali before she gets to her mid-game spike, and it also kind of delays Tristana too a little bit, but it's mostly for the Akali, right? So in the game, Supermassive, they don't put a whole lot of vision priority bot lane, but instead keep the river warded up from top to bottom. Now, Supermassive's bot lane have to see their priority as Yankos. He visits the lane twice, getting a kill on the support on his second gank. And then G2, they get first tower, bot lane, and then they lane swap. Now, Supermassive get a really nice team fight around 1730, which, getting only one kill, but also getting mid and top tier 1, along with Rift Herald. So this is like a really good macro fight for them, pretty much. And then at 20 minutes, Perks jumps in during like a 5v5, and then Wonder tries to follow up with his Ornn ult, but Stomage Skarner ults him to stop it. So like, this was super perfect. Supermassive, they get a 1-for-0 and mid tier 2, and then they just have such an advantage mid game that G2 weren't able to scale up their Tristana at all. And then Supermassive, for this entire game, they just had good objective control, and they were able to close out super cleanly. And then Snowflower also just played really well, denying a lot of damage in team fights and stuff. So just overall, a really good game plan from Supermassive. I really like the draft adaptation. I think it was very smart. Yeah, and just a really good game from them. And this is kind of what I expected from them coming into this plan stage, was that GBM is going to pull out these pocket picks because that's what he's traditionally known for. And I don't think G2 look that hot going into Worlds. So yeah, sure, they won the gauntlet, but I still don't think they looked impressive in their Misfits match, which shows that when they're facing a good team, then they just kind of crumble. And specifically Wonder crumbled, but I had my concerns about G2. So the next game, we have Ascension Gaming versus Supermassive. Now, this draft, it's nothing really to write home about. Like, yeah, Supermassive, they get the Kassadin, which is pretty dope, and then they get Lucian as well too on the second rotation. And it's nice that GBM is able to counter LeBlanc, but later on we see that G4's LeBlanc is very good. So get into the game specifics. Lloyd, he ganks bot, and then he burns 3 summoners from Supermassive, right? And then later on, Ascension, they invade for blue buff and get a 2 for 0. And G4, the LeBlanc, didn't even have priority for the mid wave, but Graves was able to invade and get a kill on Stomage. So this game, it seems like G4, he had an individual like ability to play against GBM, and it showed really hard. Even though GBM had the counter pick, and that's a loose counter pick, really. I don't think it's like super hardcore counter pick. But yeah, it's nice that he gets to outplay him at, like, I think it's 14 minutes. And this just prompts Ascension's mid and jungle duo just to run rampant in the early game, right? Which helps Rich. And then Rich helps with his roams. So, and then Zeitnot, he had an early CS lead, but they were unable to crack the tier 1 before mid lane falls, right? So everything about Supermassive's whole game plan just fell apart because of mid lane and jungle. And so mid lane and jungle kind of take over the entire game until around 18 minutes, Supermassive get a really good team fight, and they get a 2 for 0 along with Mountain Drake. And then Rocky Cho teleports into the enemy team as both teams posture like near Baron, and then he dies alongside Lloyd, the Graves for Ascension. And so Supermassive get Baron, and then they just close out like textbook style. So Ascension just didn't keep up the pressure through jungle and vision control to toggle between towers whenever they wanted to take them. So that was really the big fault of Ascension. You can just see Ascension Gaming, their vision control is just not good. Their objective setup is not very good either. And this is how Supermassive just got back into the game. Now, Ascension versus G2. There's not much to really say about this one. Like, so Wonder, he gets Cole on his first recall, right? So he's going for the greedy lane, and then he picks up at 8:20, G2 pick a fight mid, but Rocky has TP and Wonder doesn't. So it's like a 5v4, and then essentially get a 2-for-1 behind the Dragon Pit, right? And then they also get Infernal Drake too. So they're already really snowballing at this point. And then Ascension also get Rift Herald. But then later on during mid game, once Baron comes up, G2 they steal Baron, and then they're able to clean up all 5 members and then just win the game off of Baron push, right? So G2 was behind, like they were on the back foot for a good majority of the game, like in pockets of the game. So this is kind of telling in that G2 oftentimes they don't really know how to play around lane setup or vision setup, and they just go into team fights and stuff just super willy-nilly, and without even realizing that Wonder doesn't have his TP or anything. And you can see this is a trend constantly, that Wonder is not able to get to team fights, and this happened within Misfits games as well too. So, and I believe it also happened in the Gauntlet run as well. So I just see a weird disconnect between G2 and Wonder, like, and it's just really strange. This game, G2, if they were against a better team, probably wouldn't have won, but they did, so I guess that's all good. Now to go on to day 4. Let's see here. Day 4. So this is Supermassive versus G2, and it's the rematch, and G2 win this time. And so looking at the team comps, Supermassive decide to go for the Aatrox, and then of course G2 get Urgot in response, because, well, you have to ban the Heimerdinger, you have to ban the Akali, and they decide to ban Ryze as well too, because they just want to target perks. As you can see further in the draft, they do LeBlanc and also Syndra. So super hardcore targeting perks, because he seems to be the one that's actually performing pretty well throughout the play-in stage. And, well, I guess we'll get to his game later where he doesn't perform that well. So, Perks has to go to Orianna, and this kind of hinders G2's entire draft, but it's actually not that bad of a pick, because Orianna is always meta, which is a great thing about her. And so to get into game specifics, the early game is pretty damn slow, but G2, they get a good team fight in the mid game, and then around 2050, Supermassive use Rift Herald mid to get tier 2, and G2 try to fight behind the enemy blue buff, but then it's like this choke point. And this is also at the time where Hjarnan isn't even close to them. I think he's clearing a top lane wave. And so Cassiopeia and Trundle just destroy G2. And they're able to get a 2-for-1. And then at 2430, Supermassive go for a Mountain Drake, but G2 just go for Baron at that time and get it mostly uncontested, sacrificing Wadid. So this is where it starts to roll back into G2's favor, just because of superior objective mindfulness. It's not even control at that point. It's just knowing that they're way the fuck over there and Baron's already up. So, and Supermassive admittedly probably didn't think that they could take it fast enough, because it's a Jhin, so that's not really the fastest Baron taker, as far as ADCs are concerned. So they scale up from this. They're able to kind of pull back the game, and Supermassive at 31 minutes, they decide to engage mid, And Zeitnot uses his net to escape Perks because Perks is flanking them because he gets zoned out from Trundle. And this is like the moment where you see Zeitnot is just a fucking badass. Like, he does tons of DPS. It's not enough, really, though, because GBM gets destroyed because he's in the front line. And both teams, they get 2 for 2. And then Fabulous tries to TP to get back into this fight as G2 are retreating. And then ends up giving more kills. So they end up losing 2 for 1 in that exchange, and then Baron afterwards. So really the only thing to take away from this game is Zeitnot played so damn well, but Supermassive, his front line just didn't really play that well, as they never really hard committed to targets and allowing him to just DPS. And then Yankos did really well controlling around Drake. He was able to get the first 3 Drakes, and crucially, the Ocean Drake, which always swings lane matchups. So that's very important. It's very key. And I think, honestly, more teams should try and control Drake because it's really important, especially if it's a Ocean Drake. That's really important to do. Now, this is the game where Edward Gaming got upset. So Scout, he stomps the mid lane, right? And then Infinity Esports, they try to focus bot side, but get countered by Ray just stomping 1v3. He does that 1v3 outplay, and he ends up getting a double kill. And then Ray just takes over the game after that portion. And then at 24:50, INF just find a crazy team fight in the mid lane with Cyan knocking up like 3 people, and INF just get 5 for 0 and Baron, and just gets out of control, and that's how they're able to win the game. So this was just a really big fuck up in the mid game, just with Edward Gaming just not respecting Infinity Esports team fight composition, and the Rakan didn't even get a good ult off either. So this could have went even better for Infinity, but so Edward Gaming, they just didn't respect what the enemy team comp does and then what their own team comp does, because Fiora already had the advantage. So why not just play the split push game and play around Fiora's pressure as she's pressuring the other side of the map? It just doesn't make any sense to me, because that's inherently what that champion does. That's what it's designed to do. It's designed to win the 1v1. So just really weird, really messed up. EDG didn't know how their own team comp functioned, and that's primarily why they lost. That's really about it. Supermassive versus Ascension. So this one, let's see. This one is where, well, I didn't really pay too much attention to this one. You can just see the picks. It's just like, all right, you get Jarvan, and then you get Varus as well too. So you want to snowball. You want to snowball the early game, and that's basically your win condition. You just snowball the early game, and hopefully you get picks with the Jarvan, and then after that, you just kind of play out the game afterwards. And yeah, this game, Wonder, he this is the one where oh wait, no, I'm thinking of G2 versus Ascension. Never mind. Yeah, so I didn't really need to watch this game. I already knew Supermassive were gonna win this one. I just kind of looked over on the side screen, and I hear they kind of snowballed the early game anyways. So not much to say about that one. Let's see. So G2 versus Ascension. Now for this one, yeah. So this is showing a pattern within the entire plan in that I don't think Rocky knows how to play Urgot. Uh, I'm I'm pretty sure because I don't think I saw him play Urgot. Let me check the other games because I'm pretty sure he didn't play Urgot the entire time. Yeah. Uh, yeah, he never played Urgot. They never tried to first pick Urgot either because they first picked Varus when they were against G2 beforehand. So it's just pretty telling that Ascension can't play Urgot. So they never try and ban it out for some reason. And they decide that the Thresh is more worthy of a ban for some reason. So yeah, really strange. But G2 they get Urgot first pick, and then they also give the respect ban to G4 on the LeBlanc. So that's pretty cool. Other than that, nothing super crazy about the draft other than Ascension just not knowing how to play a super 100% meta pick. Very bad. Anyways, game specifics. Lloyd, he contests race around 4 minutes, which he's able to steal most of the small raptors. And he also forces Jankos to flash around the red buff. So it's really good. Slows down Jankos' early game. And then at 5:30, after Lloyd is caught out next to Baron Pixel Bush, and Rich tries to help him, G4 goes hard onto Perks, and then for harass, but is ganked by Wadid and Jankos. But then Rich is still there, so he ends up just turning around and helping him out, and they kill Perks because he doesn't have any mana, so he can't even contribute to this gank, right? So G2 couldn't return a kill, and Ascension get a 1-for-0, and then at 7 minutes, Jankos invades for red buff and secures it with Perks, and Olaf is like nowhere near the red buff area. I think he's still in base, just coming back from a bye, and G4, he goes to check red buff, figures out that they're there, and then he places a ward behind red buff, and then chases Perks as he's coming back down, back into him, into River. And so he harasses him out. Perks has to like go back around behind the red buff to go the long way. And then Jankos decides to recall in that bush behind red buff. So so G4 goes back, interrupts him, and then kills him. And so this is just an oversight from Jankos himself because, well, it should be pretty obvious that he wards behind your red buff, or the Supermassive's red buff, because he wants to know if you are going to either exit their jungle or go and take golems, or Krugs, because Supermassive had the or G2 had the push with Urgot top lane. So it's like, okay, if Supermassive ward behind the red buff, which they should, that means that either they're going to see you path back to your own jungle as G2, or they're going to see you path towards golems to then gank top lane afterwards when Wonder pushes the Fabulous under his tower. So it's an intelligent ward. You should expect this ward if you're G2, but instead Jankos recalls in that bush, dies, and then Perks gets harassed out again, and then he dies too trying to save Jankos. And so it's a 2-for-1 because Wonder, like, he roams down and it kills him. But it's just a really bad early game from G2. I don't know what they're doing. I don't think they know what the enemy team is doing in terms of vision control, and this just seems to be a recurring pattern from G2. So it's kind of worrying. The rest of the game, not very interesting, but that's the main highlight. Wonder is like super ahead. He's like 40 CS ahead at 10 minutes. So they just win through Wonder himself and like his massive pressure. And then also G2, they get a 2-for-1 as Jankos counter ganks top lane, and then Hjarnan is also roaming top to do a lane swap afterwards because Wadid was already there. And they take the tier 1, and then they kind of go from there, and they just win the game after that because they have so much of a gold lead. But the earlier portions of the game, it just seemed like G2 didn't know how to play around vision or the response from Supermassive, so that was a little bit weird. And then we had the tiebreaker, right? Tiebreaker, man, G2 just stomp. They flex Urgot to mid, and then they pick a Akali, and so this shows that Supermassive can't even play Akali because they don't pick it on second rotation. Instead, they pick Ashe for some reason, some odd reason. They pick Ashe because Varus is banned on the side of G2. So it's really weird that they don't pick Kai'Sa or they don't pick Akali. So that might show that they don't know how to play either of these picks. So really concerning. It's really about it. G2 just stomped this game. Nothing to really talk about in that entire matchup. But so far, these plans are shaping up. I'm looking forward to see how Supermassive functions within the knockout stage. You have Cloud9 versus Gambit. They're just going to stomp them. You have EDG versus Detonation Focus Me. They're just going to stomp them. And then you have G2 versus Infinity Esports. That's going to be a stomp. And then you have G-Rex versus Supermassive. That's going to be a very good match. I don't think Supermassive have the amount of time to learn Akali. And then also the Kai'Sa, I'm not sure if they actually know how to play it. So I don't think... I'm trying to see here. Let me go back. Yeah, it's strange. Supermassive don't actually know how to play Kai'Sa because whenever it was left up, they never picked it. So that's really, really strange. So I think that's one of their big weaknesses. They have a preference for Varus, and whenever Varus is banned, they're kind of just fucked. So they go on to the Lucian, or they do like a Caitlyn or something, but otherwise, yeah, they don't know how to play Kai'Sa, which every single ADC within this tournament should know how to play that pick. So I think that's going to be the big fault of them. I think they're going to get wrecked by G-Rex, and it's going to hinge on the pick and ban phase. But otherwise, I think it would have been a pretty decent match. I think it still might be, even so, but with seeing that tiebreaker and just seeing the trend, Supermassive don't know how to play Kai'Sa. So that's my review. Hope you guys like it, and I will probably be doing a review for the knockout stage as well too, so stay tuned for that one. Peace.